So welcome to Property Pursuits. We've been absent last month, but we're back. And that being said, that means we have a lot more to talk about with what's going on with the economy, what's going on with the market. As you can see, I have a guest, Val Jackson, with Real Brokerage. She's a realtor here in Reno and a real estate investor. Yeah. Tell us about yourself. Who are you?
I'm a mom and a wife and an investor who kind of stumbled into it and then discovered that it was great and life-changing. And then I got my real estate license and then figured out, oh, I like helping other people do it too.
What would you say you are first? Would you say you're an investor first or a realtor first?
I'm an investor first. I have to, when somebody wants to buy a property and they don't care about the numbers, I have to rein myself in. Like, okay, we're just talking about paint colors and your dream. Okay, I can do that. But I get really excited when somebody wants to say, here's how this will impact me in the future, or at least look at it that way. It doesn't have to be for an investment, but if it's their personal home and they're thinking about the future too, then that's
exciting too.
That's exciting.
I love it when I have the same thought process, not just because I'm a lender. From the lending standpoint, when I pre-approve people, I do feel like it's my opportunity to sell them on the white picket fence and the pool in Midtown maybe isn't the most important part about all this. The most important part is the way you use this as a stepping stool. I'm not trying to talk about poop. I'm trying to talk about like forward movement. Like the way you use this to move closer to your other financial goals, the potential return on investment, like
read it as an aesthetic thing because I suck at looking at it as the houses that Josh and I have bought, I have not seen. Like rental properties, I don't go see them. And I don't like to look at the inspection reports because it stresses me out really badly. So I make him deal with all that poor man. But I run the numbers on the mortgage and the cash flow and what the potential if we renovate versus if we don't and what it will look like over time. And if I feel good about that, then we do it. But even when we bought a second home, I never saw it till after closing. I just wanted to make sure we could afford it. I ran the numbers on the mortgage and what it would be like for us and how it would impact our monthly budget. And I saw it after. My friend Stacy saw it before I did.
Well, cause you can make the best of the aesthetic pretty easily. All the other stuff that will add stress, you don't think about it first.
Well, and I know there's a lot of people who love home decor. I walk into a home decor store and feel panic in my. Don't like decorating. The house is not decorated. Everyone on Instagram tells me that all the time. Anyways, we're on a tangent now. Yeah. Back to you and being an investor first. I have a question for you. And Val's been on the podcast before, so I would highly encourage everyone to come back and check out her previous episode. But now it is June, the last week of school for the kids. Going to be a very interesting summer with this real estate market, which we'll talk about in a second, even though we didn't plan to talk about it. But how do you feel as a mom? Are you excited for summer break with kids and trying to run your real estate business, or are you scared?
I'm excited. For one, we already have our camp planned out, so that helps.
You already paid a mortgage payment for all the camps?
But we are, as a family, going to Missouri to set up one of our rentals as an Airbnb.
Oh.
And we get to teach the kids about it.
That's really cool.
I'm really excited. And one of the places where we invest is St. Joseph, Missouri, which is part of the Pony Express that also comes through Nevada. But it was also a starting off point for the Oregon Trail. And the kids have both learned about that this year. So they're really excited to go back and go to the Pony Express Museum. And
that's really cool.
A really full educational moment.
So at Real Brokerage, I think former president was Sharon. Was that his title? He was talking on his podcast about how his son wanted to do a deal. And so he was identifying this duplex somewhere not in California where they live, somewhere in middle America where they could pencil. And Sharon was kind of just letting him go through it the hard way. And then finally was like, dude, like the numbers aren't going to work. This was after weeks of the kid like running the numbers on it, penciling it, having a friend, a realtor there, go visit the property a couple times. And at dinner, Sean's saying that he's starting to tell the kid it's not going to work. And the kid looks at him like, why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? And he was like, well, you have to learn it yourself. And he goes, what's the point then? If you're not like, it's this whole stance of like, how much tough love do you let kids figure it out themselves? And it pertains even to real estate investing versus how much are we going to give them our knowledge and let them level up from where we started. And the wife, Sharon said his wife just took her plate and got up and left because she's like, I'm not going to be here for this conversation. But Sharon like got like emotional because he's like, you're right. I should make you start at square one when I know these things. So I think it's really cool that you're taking them and you're going to show them like, I hope my kids want to do real estate investing because life changing. Like it is literally life changing. Do you mind sharing a little bit of your story again about how it was life changing for you?
Yeah, we just both had W-2 jobs and moved right after grad school to Reno and found that it was more expensive than we had imagined it would be. And so we were looking at monthly expenses and saying, we don't add something else, then we can't afford swim lessons. We can't do the extra things. We might be able to make it monthly, but we won't have extra. So we took the little extra we had and took the leap. It was risky. It was scary. But then once we saw that we could do it, we kept doing it. And then
what's the leap? What was that? What was taking the leap?
Hire rental.
So where did you buy your first rental?
Rehab it and rent it out in Missouri. We started there and have chosen to stay there because we had success and because the numbers work, because we have an amazing team, contractor, property manager, our partner lives there. And so it all made sense to just keep scaling from that point. Understanding the local market, street by street, which place should you buy versus, I know fair housing says you shouldn't pick by the neighborhood, but there's reality in picking by the neighborhood. So knowing that, understanding that, and even understanding the culture, we just did a flip where we didn't completely rehab all of the pretty stuff. We just did the practical things like a new water heater and a new roof and upgraded electrical. And then the kitchen was ugly, but it was in a great neighborhood. And we knew that people in a working class neighborhood would say, hey, all of these things that are going to cost us a lot are taken care of. We can fix the kitchen on nights and weekends.
On our own time.
And it works.
Just for you guys. And I also like to the buyers listening to this, keep an open mind about those properties. If the big ticket expenses that make it safe and healthy to live there are done, cosmetic stuff you could do over time.
Because it all works. Like, why be wasteful and change it all, especially not knowing what somebody's taste is?
Yeah, because it's personal. Yeah. Some people actually do have style, unlike me, and they want to pick this stuff. I think that's a good strategy. So that's a little bit of background on how Val got into this, but at some point you were able to leave your W-2 job.
Mm-hmm. Well, I left my W-2 job during the pandemic and then got my real estate license. But currently my husband and I are both just doing real estate full time.
How many doors do you have in Missouri now?
A little over 300.
Holy shit! That number's gone up so much distance when you spoke at the Futurist Female.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Yeah. Apartment investing will do that. It's scaling.
I'm so in awe. That's so badass.
It's mostly my husband. But...
No, it's you, Val. Val's the secret sauce. I know because I know how smart Val is. Okay, so we were going to talk today about the big, beautiful bill. But before we get into that, I want to talk about this major shift that's happening in the real estate market that many people have not seen for a very long time. So inventory in Northern Nevada is up 15% over the past 30 days. Redfin put out that big headline last week that there are 500,000 more homes available than buyers in the market, which people tried to write off as fake news, but I don't think it entirely is.
Well, and Redfin and Zillow are both calling for major softening nationwide in 2025.
And why? What do you think?
I think that people are overextended. They are scared. I think they're just not sure that some people are not sure that they'll have a job. And so they don't want to make a commitment to a 30-year mortgage when they don't know if they can pay it.
Fair. I would, as a lender, recommend you don't take out a loan you can't pay back.
Right. And then I saw something like 62 to 65% of the loans are still sub 4%.
That is wild.
60%
60% of homeowners still have a mortgage payment with under 4%?
I saw something like that. So it's either paid off or it's sub 4%. Which means that people are just riding that, sticking it out until interest rates come down.
I think that there's huge opportunity in a market softening like this. And people have missed, there have actually been times. So people would say it hasn't been a buyer's market, for maybe a decade. There were pockets where things slowed down. Like I remember, I think it was about 18 months ago when my brother Neil was trying to sell his ranchera house. The market had softened for a few months right there. And it was near impossible for him to move that house. And he got an amazing deal on his house in Vegas because of that moment of softening when people don't want to keep things on their books. Sellers have uncertainty. They need to move. And this is when you can get an amazing deal. I will say, in my experience so far, we're not seeing like insane. Like we're not seeing like you're going to get a house for nothing, because if we ask for too much in terms of a price reduction or we ask for too much in terms of a credit, we're getting a straight up rejection because sellers don't have to sell. Like you said, you probably have a pretty good interest rate. They might be dealing with some uncertainty of their own. And so they're like, listen, I'm not going to sell at a loss. I'm not going to sell. They still have a pretty good amount of like wiggle room, I'd say. We won't see, in my opinion, at least, I'd love to know what you think. I don't think we see like any sort of bottom fall out or even a major price correction unless we're in a place where sellers have to sell, where, you have a majority of the market, not just one-offs here and there, where sellers are in a position where they need to move that property with their book, which typically only happens when you're in a short sale foreclosure environment. Otherwise, people have options. They can call their bank. They can put the mortgage into forbearance. They can do something.
Yeah. I mean, you make money whether it's selling something that's ready to go or buying a problem. So if you're solving a problem in real estate, that's where you can make your money. You're either finding an issue with the physical property or there's a solution to the seller's problem, like they need to move. So you have to kind of dig in per situation and figure out what is the motivating factor. Why are they moving or why are they selling? Can I take on something outside of price? Can I be creative?
Ask for a sell concession, restructure the deal.
Yeah.
Request certain specific repairs that maybe aren't required at this time, but you'd like. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity for buyers. I think there's no way around that. And in my opinion, I don't think it's any sort of like anything to be scared of that you're going to buy and things are going to flip upside down. Of course, as we get more information, things evolve. But
right now, I think it's a great time for investors and even first-time homebuyers to get into something. So let's talk about Trump's big, beautiful bill. Val did research because Val doesn't come unprepared for things. So we'll start with, should we talk about the Medicaid impact? Should we talk about the deficit? Should we talk about what Katie Couric is posting that her TikTok's on, that buried in this bill is the ability for our government officials to not be held accountable? Or should we just focus on real estate?
So yesterday when I was researching, I had to go to the Truckee River and take a break. I felt the closest to a panic attack that I've ever felt. So let's only talk about real estate.
We'll stay focused here.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the first thing I noticed in the bill, as it pertains to real estate, well, actually, let me tease to the end of what I think is going to be the biggest impact, which is if the deficit increases this much, it will have an impact on interest rates. But before we go there, let's talk about the SALT deduction. So I believe this mainly only benefits high earners in expensive markets.
I think it's homes 500,000 and below.
Okay, tell me.
I understood it as the mortgage interest rate deduction of the value of $500,000 and below.
Well, I saw a thing about the mortgage interest rate deduction, and people were hoping, because you can only deduct up to $750,000 right now, right, of your mortgage interest. So that isn't great for luxury buyers, and they were hoping that he was going to increase the limit on that, so you could take more of a mortgage interest rate deduction on your primary residence, but he didn't.
But SALT deduction went from $10,000 to $40,000 in the bill.
Right, but that's different, and I think that what that does is it makes it so that if you're in a high income tax state in a like expensive market, like think Chicago, think New York City, that it won't hurt you as much to buy homes in those areas. And I didn't see the part about 500,000 and under.
I could be. Okay. Well, there were 5 different things, so let me look at my notes.
Because I think this is a big deal because we're not really trying. The people who need help here are not the people who can afford to buy a $2 million.
So if they're the ones who get the main benefit from the SALT deductions, that's not ideal.
No.
Well, I mean, it's ideal for them.
So that might be something to circle back on in principle.
Yeah, let's do that.
I can do that.
So when we post the recording on this, Val will come back with clarification on who truly benefits from the SALT deduction. My understanding of it is it's going to impact expensive cities and the people who can afford to buy homes there because it kind of reduces their tax implication. But we'll see.
Well, and we have so many benefits in Washoe County, especially with our property taxes being tied to the year that the home was built. So
if you're not familiar, in northern Nevada, almost all of it, right? It's not just Washoe County.
I think it is most of northern Nevada.
Our tax bill doesn't reset at closing. So, for example, in California, when I qualify buyers there, I have to qualify them with a tax rate of 1.25% of the sales price because that's what it'll reset to post-closing immediately based on the price. Here, when you buy a home, the existing tax bill stays in place, and Washoe County does their own assessment of the value periodically. But it's based on the age of the home. So the older the home is, the lesser your tax bill is, which is amazing. It makes hundreds of dollars of difference on your monthly payment, which you're right. It's a huge advantage. And another reason, aside from the lack of income tax, that people buy real estate and invest here. Because even if you're an out-of-state investor, cash flow is better. Okay, the other thing that I thought was interesting in this was he campaigned heavily on capital gains tax. And there's nothing improving it. It's staying the same.
Well, but the 1031 exchange will stay.
Was anyone talking about taking it away?
In the campaign, yeah.
They were?
Oh, yeah. They wanted it gone.
But you can't 1031 exchange properties anymore? I'd be so sad.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be really bad.
For a lot of people, mostly in the Democratic Party, saying, let's get rid of the 1031 exchange, let's get rid of bonus depreciation and all of these tax benefits, because that's one way to solve an issue with our budget, to make more money in taxes.
No.
That's what they were asking for.
So the tax code, very interesting. And you guys have heard me say this a lot. You're all sick of me talking about it. But the tax code is a contract that every U.S. citizen signs with the government, but it's very hard to understand, and few of us truly understand it in its entirety. I am obviously very interested in the benefits of the tax code for real estate investors. And if you were to ask me, I would say the entire tax code is written as a playbook for entrepreneurs and real estate investors to live tax-free. Mm-hmm. And so it would be terrible to take away 1031 exchange tax benefits. But I do think people were hoping for more from this bill when it came to their deductions, specifically with capital gains. Basically just staying the same.
What do you think would be better?
Well, I personally don't think that we are currently in a place with our government budget and spending and deficit that we could afford to make it better right now. I don't think we can afford to take away revenue at this particular moment. But that's just my personal opinion. I know that a lot of people believe the capitalist market will thrive more if there was higher benefits, better exclusions for capital gains, and not pay taxes on it. That's the other thought process, you know?
Do you think it could, if there were more exclusions, do you think more people would sell properties that they're holding on to because they'd pay less in taxes? And it would free up more inventory? I don't know the numbers on how many homes are just sitting because of capital gains.
Would be interesting to see, because right now you can exclude up to $250,000 of your capital gains. So when if you're not following us right now and we're like talking in gibberish, capital gains tax. So when you sell a property, you don't have to pay tax on your profit from that property if it was a primary residence for 2 of the last 5 years, up to $250,000. If you're married and you both own it, then it's up to $500,000. And you get to take out money you've put into improving the property, and there's like a basis of this. So it gets a little bit complicated, but to keep it simple, what Val's saying is, are there people out there who are hesitating to sell their property because they have more, property values have gone up a lot over time, they have more than $500,000 and will be taxed heavily on the additional profit? Odds are they want to spend those additional profits to put into the new mortgage and not have to withhold so much back to pay their taxes. Because nobody wants a surprise tax bill on that. I think it's an interesting point, and maybe it would free up some mobility if the capital gains tax exclusion was higher and we'd see more inventory come on. But on the other hand,
I don't think that there are that many people that fall into that category because they have other options. You can rent your home.
Yeah, keep it as a rental.
Even a couple of weeks and then do a 1031 exchange and not pay any capital gains tax. You can get creative, but although the vast majority of Americans are holding a home for 7 years?
Yeah.
And then moving. So is it really that much money?
I don't know that it affects a lot of mom and pop homeowners or investors, but I know it impacts corporations in a big way. I actually just qualified my first borrower to buy an investment property, and his entire income is capital gains income. That's the only income he has is capital gains income. And we qualified him, and it was a very good learning experience. You never stop learning in my job. What else did you see in this bill that pertains to real estate before I go on interest rates?
Well, the QBI, qualified business income, that increases. So from 20 to 23% on how much you can deduct. And
that's great for real estate investors, entrepreneurs.
Or realtors. I mean, 90% of realtors qualify for this with their tax professional dealing with their deductions and their small business.
Goodness.
You should talk to your CPA about what to do.
CPAs must be having such a hard time keeping up with all of this.
A lot of things.
Personality who wants to be a CPA anyway.
If you want control over what people do, you become a CPA.
Yeah.
You get to tell people.
I call my CPA before I call my husband about things.
They understand it, and they can give you strategy if they're doing their job.
But there's a lot of mediocre ones out there.
Oh yeah. We still have tax credits for low-income housing in the bill. From what I understand, as of yesterday, they're done editing the stimulus portion.
Oh.
So they want to bring back 100% from depreciation for investors who are building in opportunity zones.
This is huge.
Huge. And I know some people are not for it, but
because of the gentrification.
Well, I haven't heard of any thoughts on that. I think people who say that billionaires shouldn't get tax breaks don't fully understand who might qualify. So I qualify as an investor who buys in opportunity zones, and I do value add. So I take something that's maybe not livable and I make it livable.
Which improves the housing because more housing benefits all housing. And a lot of these opportunity zones are where people need affordable housing, but investors aren't going in there because there's risk attached. And so sometimes the tax benefits will help offset the risk attached to developing an area that maybe has higher crime.
It's crime. It's just maybe it's run down, and that's old isn't bad, but if it's obsolete or if no longer safe to live in because of the electrical system or completely redoing the plumbing in one of our buildings because it wasn't safe. So that's a huge cost. And it's like instead of the government coming to me and contracting and saying, we want you to do this work, so we're going to give you the money up front, which if you've watched, like a lot of these contracts don't even come to fruition. I mean,
it's what the general public wants to happen, but doesn't realize that logistically it doesn't work that well.
Good deal for the American people to keep paying ahead of something being done. Where the tax break means that once the work is complete, then it gets paid for, or the benefits come to the person who's taken the risk. And that's a better deal because the work is done. The building gets built or rehabbed or, affordable housing in place, and then they pay for it.
That's a really good point. We need to stop cutting checks in advance.
Yeah.
And a tax incentive is exactly that, right? You don't get the benefit till you do the thing. I like it. It's accountability. Should I talk about interest rates now? Or you got more?
Well, it's already 12:28, so.
But I want you to tell me if you have something else.
Big thing.
Female guests are the best at not rambling and being respectful of time. When we get dudes on here, they just love the sound of their voice. They keep talking. Dudes who've been on here, I also love the sound of your voice. That's why you were invited to come. So don't get butthurt. I just said that. What were you going to say?
Let's talk about interest rates.
Okay. Okay, so the way this happens to play out, which is not ideal, because let me back up. In January of this year, which feels like a lifetime ago and how much has changed in the real estate market, we were really optimistic about interest rates because of one specific thing. Not even trying to figure out like what policy was going to happen with this administration, but just the fact that we knew what administration was in office, we could kind of foresee what kind of policy was coming. The reason that matters is because the market doesn't always move based on fact. The market moves a lot of the time based on emotion. And so as the stock market fluctuates, as financial markets move up or down, there's a demand that changes for mortgage bonds, and this impacts mortgage interest rates. Typically, in times of uncertainty, the demand for bonds increases. People want to put their money in a safer asset class, and they buy more bonds. And when there's a lot of demand for mortgage bonds, mortgage interest rates improve. There's another factor that impacts this. There's a spread between the 10-year Treasury note and the 30-year fixed interest rate. Typically, that spread in normal economic times, which I personally cannot remember, but maybe someone listening can, the last time we were in normal economic times, is that spread is usually just 100 basis points, just 1%. So if 10-year Treasury was at 4.5%, mortgage interest rates would be at about 5.5%. Because of how much uncertainty we've had since the pandemic, that spread has actually grown to 300 basis points, 3%. So at times you will see 10-year being in the 4s and mortgage interest rates being in the 7s. And that's just uncertainty and fear built into the spread. In January, that spread was closing. And so even without the 10-year moving, even without
we were going to see mortgage interest rates improve because the spread is closing. There was more certainty about what might happen. The spread is back to increasing now, which is why I think it's a pretty safe bet that we will see interest rates stay in the 6s for the foreseeable future. However, a risk is this bill does increase the deficit substantially. I mean, there's not
flipped on this bill and said it's a terrible choice and we have to vote everybody out who votes for it, solely based on the fact that it will increase the deficit so much, which is kind of the opposite of what was promised from this administration, from this new Make America Great Again, this government efficiency plan, DOGE, all of it was really, let's get the budget back in balance. This bill does not accomplish that. And the impact it would have on real estate is if there is more government debt, then the government issues more treasuries. And there's less demand for these bonds, these treasuries, mortgage interest rates go up. Which I think for buyers out there right now who just heard us talk about this being a buyer's market, it's actually good for you if interest rates stay in the 6s, 7s, because that means you're not seeing as fast of a reacceleration of prices and as much competition out there. But I think it will keep some sellers in their golden handcuffs, like you were talking about. And I think it will limit some inventory from coming on and a lot of people from making moves they would have made this year if things were a little bit more favorable in terms of borrowing costs.
Well, and there are people who say, if we have interest rates really come down, then we're going to have the market flooded with all of these people who have just been sitting on a 3% mortgage because they're not thinking about other options. They're comfortable with their monthly payment, and yet they're not really happy with their house.
They're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about lenders and realtors having opinions on this stuff?
I think they all should have opinions and be in the know. You mean like political things?
Well, yeah, because you're not supposed to talk about politics and religion.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, politics has such a big impact on what we're seeing and should impact your real estate strategy. But what do you think about, for example, a mortgage lender having an opinion about what's happening?
Well, I post about politics and religion on my so, I think that I'm more comfortable showing up as my full self, maybe than other people. Boring if somebody wants to just pretend like it doesn't exist. But also they might be afraid to engage. It's okay to feel like you don't know all these. I don't exactly understand. Some people say that this bill will remove the deficit, and other people say that it increases the deficit. I don't understand how they're running that math. The varying opinions.
Well, there's also it's hard to find just the facts too.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's a lot of fake news and rhetoric, and now with AI, you can make somebody look like they're doing something and saying something when maybe
they never did.
AI. So I understand if people are uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, if you're a mortgage lender or a realtor, you can get down to what that individual needs without you can be empathetic to what's going on, but what the individual needs is ultimately how they decide what to do going forward.
Yeah, it's a personal thing. Your strategy is going to be based a lot on your personal finances. I think that current events come into play and you have to work with someone who's keeping up to speed. You should probably work with someone who watches Property Pursuits every month. Also, you don't have to wait for us every month. Speaking of Val posting stuff, you can see what she posts on her stories about religion and politics. Follow her on Instagram at Valerie Jackson, and Valerie's VALA RIE. And then you can follow me at Tiff Peter. Okay, so something else I wanted to talk about real quick. Val's right. We're running short on time, so we're gonna move. The new American dream is townhomes, and I'm not saying this because I'm the preferred lender for 18 on Lakeside, because they're not actually the case study for this. There's been a lot of articles and also a lot of talk about both affordability, but also this new generation wants different things, right? So I think townhomes are a great way to break in to home ownership because they're typically more affordable than a single family residence. They don't come with all the baggage of a condo. Condos have high HOAs that kind of eat up the whole affordability benefit. And they're kind of a pain in the ass to get lending on oftentimes. But that's a story for another day. Townhomes, it is your own individual home. You don't have, you typically will not have 4 shared walls like you would in a condo. A condo's an apartment, essentially. Townhomes give you that ability to have your own space, hopefully at a lesser price, but ultimately they take away a lot of the things that tie homeowners down, like maintenance, landscaping. Like you could just literally lock your door and leave if you want to still travel a ton and you want to still have a really flexible life.
I just read an article about families that decided that they were going to move to a townhome. When she even said she was driving by her own house because they all look the same outside. She gave up this really unique yard with a lawn because they wanted to travel. They wanted freedom. And to get that freedom, they needed to share walls with neighbors.
I think that it's a very personal thing for sure, but before I'll let the American dream die, you guys, I will make you aware of every option that should be on your radar. Okay, Val wanted to, this was not me. I didn't push this. It was her idea. She wanted to talk about the recession and what people should be doing if it materializes and how you could be getting ahead of it.
So, unless a miracle happens in June, we will have 2 quarters of the GDP
Climbing.
And that will be officially a recession. And we've already heard Trump blaming it on Biden, so he's prepared that it's going to come up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that's scary for a lot of people. I remember hearing an economist saying, technically we went through a recession during COVID, but they changed the rules or, certain things that we did sort of helped us float through that time. However, one thing I know is it won't be caused from housing. However, there will be factors that impact housing in a recession. If fewer people are buying, more opportunities can present themselves. Lots of people they became financially free or they made millions of dollars during the last recession. And whether you think that's ethical or not, they took advantage of the opportunity that was there.
Totally. So you touched on a couple things that I want to expand on. One being, a recession can happen that doesn't feel like the Great Recession we saw when I was graduating college, 2009. There can be a recession that's not a job loss recession. Job loss recessions you typically feel in a really big way, and it's too early to know if this is going to be a job loss recession. The ADP numbers, so we're in a jobs week right now where we'll get the jobs number on Friday. ADP came out, which is sometimes a preview of the jobs and sometimes totally off, but it was expected to show 115,000 jobs added in the private sector, and it only showed 37,000. That's a big miss. We might see a job loss recession, but I do think it's a bit early to say on that. And I think that's kind of a defining factor of what becomes a recession that you really truly feel versus just slowed economic growth. The other thing you said, though, is the Great Recession started in housing and filtered out to everywhere else in the economy. So it was very much felt by the homeowner. And there was a lot of opportunities with homes. In this next recession, there will be opportunities for people to make a lot of money because other people step out, other people freeze. But specific to housing, I don't think right now we will see a huge, what I started the beginning of the call with, I don't see the bottom falling out. I don't see people buying houses for $100,000 in Reno, but I do see opportunities where they'll have more negotiating power because of the fear.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, like in Circle, I'd love to hear what people think would be comfortable if we had enough softening in prices. Like, would it be 10%? Would you just want to see 12%, or do you want to see more like 20%?
Like, what would make you get excited?
What would make clients get excited, or you get excited? I would love to hear what people have to say, because I think that there are more factors controlling this than just the outside factors. Like, there's a lot of information being controlled by the rhetoric that we hear, and people get scared too soon. We were all saying, like, still buy, even when interest rates went to 6%. You can still buy, and yet there were enough stories in the news that everybody was like, no, it's all crashing. Well, it hasn't crashed. I don't think it's going to crash, especially in our area. It's not going to crash, but the softening
is opportunity.
Really help people.
Totally. Interest rates hit 7 point. I have borrowers who bought in October of 2023 at 7.99%. That's basically 8%. Interest rates hit 8%, and we didn't see prices come down. Mm-hmm. We have a supply and demand problem that I don't think the recession is going to do enough to solve. So there will definitely be opportunities, but there are people who shouldn't buy in advance of a recession. Like, it's hard to think of them off the top of my head. But when I did, so in the beginning of the pandemic, I had clients that were moving up. They owned their home, and they were going to move up to a home twice the size, and they were really excited about it. And this was March of 2020, and they both worked in the casinos, and the casinos shut down.
Yeah.
And it was my advice to them to not buy. Don't sell your house and don't buy a new one. You need to sit tight, because this is personally impacting your income, and now is not the time to double your mortgage payment. So there will be definitely times when we say to people, you shouldn't do this right now. It's not the right move. It's just that most people should. Most people should take advantage of a market softening.
Yeah. Even if you need to partner with someone.
Yeah.
Purchase. Just get in any way you can.
Which is, we say it all the time, and it's like, how much can you say the same thing? But it literally changes the trajectory of your life if you get into something. And if there's a market softening for a minute, that could be your moment of opportunity. To close us out, a success story. Market advice from last year, market advice from January is not the market advice for right now. You have to be keeping real time of what you should be doing. There was a time when everybody was saying you can't even make a contingent offer, don't bother. And I know there's realtors out there still telling their clients, you don't have a shot with your contingent offer. We loved this because it gave us opportunities to be problem solvers. I love a challenging market because it gives us a chance to stand out. And we used our Home Simple program, we used our bridge loans to stand out then and help people get houses non-contingent. Right now, you guys, you probably don't need my bridge loan. You probably don't need my Home Simple program. You probably can make a contingent offer and get it accepted. I have 2 that got their offers accepted last weekend, contingent, and another one we're working on putting together right now. So if you are feeling like you can't go anywhere because you have to sell your home before you can buy something else, I wanted you to hear those success stories that people are getting contingent offers accepted. You're just going to need to be ready to list your house. I think you should have been, your realtor's probably coached you, right? Like, if you're going to be trying to do this, listing photos need to be ready, and we need to be able to say that we're going to hit the market the day you accept our offer.
Yeah. And be realistic about the price that you're going on for, and have a plan on communication, that you're going to communicate with the other side, or your agent will.
Yeah, like you have timelines in place. Everybody's protected. Everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys, thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Val, for coming. And Val said she's going to be following up in the circle. So if you want to be a part of that, if you're watching this or listening after the fact as a podcast, you want to join the circle at circle.shivpeter.com. You'll be in the loop on all kinds of upcoming events we have. We have free events monthly. Next month, we're doing one about protecting your peace in times of chaos with a therapist. my supervisor, actually, the owner of Sojourn Counseling, Ellie Holbrook. And then we have some other fun upcoming classes as well. I need to pick a date for the Future is Female for the fall, going back to empowering women as real estate investors. So stay tuned. Lots to come, but you'll only find out about it if you're in the circle. Thanks for tuning in today.